hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made the heavens and the earth. And we turn to him this day for our worship. Would you please stand as the family listens? Grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with us today. Would you bow your heads and let's pray. Father, we ask that you would fill this room with your Spirit this day and console those of us who mourn the passing of our brother Michael. In your mercy, Lord, we do ask that you come alongside, carry this family, group of friends who are missing him. We thank you for giving him to know and to love as a companion in our own pilgrimage on earth. Help us this day, Lord, to see in you and to look at that there's a promise, and that as we look at death, the promise is that all who trust in Jesus Christ have eternal life. That is our consolation this day. We thank you for your promise in Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. You can be seated. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak it all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. can only imagine. We have a couple of readings that are going to be done for us now. One from Scripture, one from a favorite of Mike's. Come on up to the podium.
I tell you this, brothers, flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does perishable inherit the imperishable. Behold, I tell you a mystery.
Someone was coming or leaving the Buche house. And when you walked into his house, you walked through a little entryway, there was a kitchen, and then around to the right were some big stairs going up to the 3 bedrooms upstairs. So you got to keep that in your mind as I go through these couple stories here. Okay, so every week Mrs. Buche would bake a bunch of cookies for the week. And many weeks there was not enough cookies left over to get through the week. And Mike and I were the ones that were blamed for the lack of cookie inventory. I myself was very offended by this. Not that I didn't take a cookie or two in my day, but I thought she would have felt good that we liked her cookies so much. Instead of using simple logic around supply and demand, like just make more cookies, Mrs. B decided she was instead try to hide the cookies. Well, game on. I don't think she really thought that went through very well. So no matter where she hid them, we would always find them. In the oven, way up in the pantry, there were no safe cookie havens. Now, I know we ate a lot of cookies, but there was no way we were responsible for all the missing cookies. Sure enough, one day, Mike and I came to Mike's house. We turned the corner to head up the stairs to Mike's bedroom when we ran into the youngest son of the Buche family, and I won't mention his name to not embarrass him. He must have been about 8 years old at that time, and he was sitting on the stairs with a handful of cookies and a mouthful of cookies, and he had the Sears catalog that happened to be open to the women's swimsuit section. Now, the funniest part of this was Mike's response to that as I was rolling on the floor, making fun of Brian. Mike said, well, that solves the mystery of how the cookies got into the shoes, because going up the stairs, every stair had a pair of shoes on it. And so what the youngest member of the family would do would steal the cookies, sit on the stairs, eat the cookies, and as someone came by, he didn't want to get caught, so he'd stick the cookies in the shoes. When I was 14, my parents went on a trip, and my grandmother and grandfather came to stay with us for a week. Well, one day we were bored, and Mike started pressuring me to ask my grandma for the car keys and take her car for a ride. Well, he had a good idea, but me, thinking a few steps ahead, just taking the keys wasn't the answer. So I simply just asked her. Mike was flabbergasted that I would do that. See, he was much more of a ask forgiveness and ask for permission type kid. So I asked, and as my grandmother continued on the phone conversation, she reached into her purse and handed me the keys at 14 and mouthed, "Have fun." Well, you can only imagine the shock and disbelief. Nonetheless, after about 30 minutes of trying to figure out how to start the car and put it in drive, we were off. We cruised around for a bit, and man, did we think we were the coolest thing. Later that same year, Mike's parents went out of town, and his grandmother came and stayed with them. So I wanted to return the favor by pressuring Mike to ask his grandma for the keys. He knew there was no way that she was going to give him the keys, so he had a plan. He was going to wait until dark, and we would put the car in neutral and push it out the driveway and to the front of the house, and then we would start it from there. So we had the whole putting the car in gear thing figured out, so this was going to be his plan. So I just sat back and said, let the reality show begin. Now remember, thinking ahead was not a strong point for either of us, but mostly Mike. When we got back to Mike's house after our joyride, we had to push the car back up the driveway, along the house, and back into the garage. Now, the we in that sentence is me, and the word to focus on is up. So that wasn't going to happen. But then all of a sudden, Mike had an epiphany. Oh, we can just drive the car up. She's so hard of hearing, she won't hear a thing. Right? Choo-choo, the wheels are starting to come off. Right, I said. Then why did we have to push it down the driveway? So he started the car up, turned on the lights, and drove the car back up into the garage. We walked into the house like nothing happened. His grandmother was sitting at the kitchen table and said, "I may not be able to hear very well, but I'm not blind." The lights, Mike, the lights. I think he got 2 weeks for that one. When I reflect back on my relationship with Mike, it was based off of fondness, respect, and acceptance of each other. We accepted each other for who we were. When I look back on Mike's life, what I admire most is his ability to reinvent himself time and time again. He had to learn to measure himself by a different yardstick than an able-bodied person did. His house had to be, and vehicle had to be different. How to navigate every day was different, and I know that wasn't easy for him or for his family. He had to accept walking with a cane, then a scooter, and then a wheelchair. He changed careers from auto body to selling insurance. He moved his family from California, then to Las Vegas. He retired from insurance and became a rolling garage sale. When traveling on an airplane got to be too much, he bought an RV and converted half of it into a bedroom and drove across the country. He never stopped living life on his terms. He did not let his disability define who he was or how he would live his life. Was Mike perfect? And I underlined in bold here, no. But as he got older, he became self-aware of his shortcomings. He worked on helping others, and he added value to whatever he did. Mike taught us all how to overcome adversity in life and go through life with a positive attitude while taking full advantage of what life has to offer. He always told me how grateful he was and truly blessed he was. We will miss you, and you will always live in our hearts forever. I got you.
It's a pretty high bar. My name is Jeff Pearson, best friend number 2. I sort of half expected Mike to be here for his eulogy. So I was a little worried when he asked me to, say a few words on his behalf. But once I started putting it to writing, it made a lot more sense. I didn't know Mike growing up, although we shared many common friends, including Rob. And my first memory of Mike was actually in middle school. He was at Blessed Sacrament, which was about a half block from my house. I didn't go to the school, but I was walking by one winter day, and I saw this. They were playing King of the Hill, and there was all these kids, wrestling and pushing each other. And I saw this one who was just fragile-looking kid, and he just kept getting pushed down the hill, and he just kept coming up to the hill. He wouldn't stop. He just was. I mean, he was relentless. I mean, he just. I'm like, man, that guy. He just wouldn't quit. And I admired his determination, and I really just wanted to help him get up that hill. We started our friendship when I joined the Carver softball team during our mid-20s. And as each year went by, we developed a deeper and deeper friendship. We truly were kindred spirits. We shared a love of sports, family, faith, friends, values, and most significantly, we each married way over our heads. Mike was a little bit luckier, though, because he met his wife, at 14, and it took me another 20 years to figure that out and get lucky. Mike really developed an amazingly large network of close friends, and it wasn't by accident. He worked hard to develop and keep those friendships. He was really our glue, held us together through softball, card games, you name it. He would do anything to keep us connected. That was very important to Mike. We all have unique gifts from God. Mike had a lot of special gifts. Connecting people, helping others, and courage are 3 that come to mind. He was a direct communicator with an amazing ability to listen, and he had great relationship skills. Mike had what I call the servant leadership style, modeled after a guy named Jesus. He was probably a little bit more direct in his communication style, and probably didn't use as many or if any parables, but you get the idea. But no matter how difficult life was for Mike, he was always grateful, happy, and wanted to hear about you. He wanted to hear your story and know how he could help you. And he had the courage to be vulnerable, and he put himself out over and over and over again. You know, one of Mike's goals in life was to be a motivational speaker, telling his life story. And although he never made a TED Talk, he did an interview with a good friend of mine and me about a year ago to capture his life story. And I'll give you a few examples here to share what he shared in his interview. And there's also a thing at the bottom of your program you can go listen to it at any time. In reality, Mike was a motivational speaker every day of his life. Every conversation, Mike was a motivation speaker. He was a motivation for me. He was a motivation for everybody, his family, his friends, everybody. So the first story was when Mike was in his mid-20s, and he was unhappy with his disease. He was angry, disrespectful, and refused to accept going into a wheelchair. He talked about he fell into a really dark place, and then God winked at Mike several times. I know Lori winked at him all the time, but in particular, there were three winks in 1 week. The first one was Vern Craven. I don't know Vern, but he was a customer, an 80-year-old customer at Carver Auto Body. And when he heard about what Mike was thinking of doing, because he didn't want to live anymore, he wanted to end his life, and he called Mike a selfish jerk. And maybe it was a little more colorful than that. And the following day, his brother-in-law, unaware of the conversation that happened the day before, had lunch with Mike and gave him the same selfish jerk speech. Mike was like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. So, the following day, he read an article in the Muscular Dystrophy magazine, and he saw about a support group. And Mike had avoided support groups because he was, a little too stubborn for that. But he finally decided to go. And there, he met Rebecca, who just so happened to have the exact same strain of MD that Mike had. And she shared her story with Mike, and that being in a wheelchair was freeing. Well, Knucklehead Mike finally got it right. He listened to those God winks, and that wheelchair opened a whole new world for him. No longer was Mike the one that everybody was waiting for. He was now waiting for them, and he loved that. After climbing out of his dark hole, Mike's focus shifted from being selfish to selfless, and he wanted to share his story with everyone and help as many people as he could get out of their black holes. Mike also got much deeper in his faith and said life is better with God. Now, fast forward years later, there's another guy, Mike, at the MD support group, who was angry, as Mike was years before. Mike got in his grill, respectfully, as Mike would do, and eventually talked him out of his dark hole. And this man was so grateful, he told Mike he was his hero. And at that man's wake, several members of the family shared their gratitude with Mike for turning Mr. Grumpy around. Now, there are hundreds more courageous stories like that where Mike helped someone get out of their dark holes or lifted them up. And many of us in this room know them personally. But this is just one of his most memorable moments. Mike didn't want us to mourn his death. Sorry, Mike, we're going to probably not listen to you on that one. He said he was going to a big party in heaven and looked forward to seeing everybody who preceded his death. And he was so happy and filled with joy after his first celebration of life. Now, not many people actually get to have one of those when they're living, so Mike was pretty smart. And he was humbled and grateful for all the folks that came together. And as Mike got closer and closer to his death, he became more and more at peace with life and death. His outer peace reflected a stronger inner peace. Some little quips of Mike's lessons that I picked up on were: life is short, and it is what you make it. Don't sit on the sidelines. Talk to each other, and don't waste your precious time on earth. Treat people with respect, and life will be good. The key message for me was find and stay connected to your support groups, your friends, your family, your church, your small groups. I'm not breaking down, just lost my spot. Have the courage to share your stories, and support groups will help you get out of the valley and up to the next peak. Also, be willing to listen to the stories of others. Mike had so many best friends, so many, because he had so much love to give. The best thing about love is the more you give, the more you get. My wife, Trish, shared a quote from watching It's a Wonderful Life last night that sums it up. All that you can take with you is that which you have given away. Thanks, Mike, for giving all your love to us.
Sounds to me like Mike had good taste in friends. I have heard about this baby boy who came to earth to bring us joy. I just want to sing this song.